Hello, I'm Anna, and this is my Wilt disease project assignment. The disease I've chosen is Dutch elm disease. What is Dutch elm disease, also known as DEAD? Dutch elm disease is a wilt disease of elm trees caused by a fungus. This highly contagious invasive fungal disease was first identified in Ontario in 1946. The disease affects the entire range of elm in Ontario. The fungal infections result in blockage of the tree's water conducting tissue and ultimately kills the susceptible elm trees. The American elm is highly susceptible of developing Dutch elm disease when it is infected with the fungus. So what organism is responsible for the Dutch elm disease? So Dutch elm disease is caused by two closely related fungi, the Ophiostoma ulmi and the Ophiostoma nova ulmi. The fungus is carried by European elm bark beetle, Escolitis multistratus, and the native elm bark beetle, which is Hylargopinus rufipes, which are the two species that transmit this contagious fungus the most. So right now you can see a picture of the European bark beetle. This is a very close-up of it, but they're actually, in reality, they are tiny, like you can barely see them. And now you're gonna be seeing a picture of the native elm bark beetle, which, as you can see, is at the moment standing on a tree. And this is basically when they start feeding and start spreading this entire fungus. But I'll get into that in the progression of the disease. So basically these beetles create breeding chambers, I guess you could say. So they basically like dig galleries where they reproduce, so like little rooms. And they create these beneath the bark of infected trees. In the spring, the beetles emerge covered in fungal spores from all the already infected, so because they're under the affected trees, all this like fungi is gonna stick to them. And so when they cling to healthy trees and begin feeding is when these spores start spreading and the disease starts spreading. So the spores remain viable on the beetle's body throughout its overwintering in healthy elm trees. And when the beetle emerges in the spring, it advertently transfers the fungal spores from its body into the woods as it feeds on the branches in spring and summer. Dutch elm disease is caused by two closely related fungi, like I previously mentioned. It's the Ophiostoma ulmi and the Ophiostoma nova ulmi, the Ophiostoma nova ulmi is the more aggressive species and is the most common pathogen associated with DEAD or Dutch elm disease nowadays. So whenever you see millions and millions of trees being like dying from this disease, is most likely to be the Ophiostoma nova ulmi. The fungus, which causes wilting and browning of the foliage, grows in the tissues beneath the bark that produce sap. Sap is a sugary liquid filled with water and nutrients that are carried throughout the tree via two types of tissues called the phloem and the xylem. Usually infections result in a tree's death within 1 or 2 years, which is, if you really think about it, these huge trees, they've taken thousands of years to grow. So for a tree to die this quickly, it is very weird and rare and just impressive what a little beetle can do. And what a little beetle can spread, what a little fungus can do. So this ultimately means that beetles kind of work as incubators that farm fungi, and when the winter is over, they spread these different types of fungi onto the trees. The fungus can also be transmitted throughout the roots of adjacent elm trees whose roots have grafted together. And this is a very concerning thing because a lot of scientists are concerned that through this technique or tactic of spreading, the disease can spread into other species of trees and ultimately end an entire forest, like it has previously done. So right now I'm going to be showing you some diagrams. So like previously mentioned, Dutch elm disease is caused by two different types of fungi, and they're spread by the elm bark beetles. And in the photo we can see the black balls and in a creamy gooey ball of spores at the top. The beetles pick up on the spores and move them around around from tree to tree. So these are the little spores. Like whenever you take a microscope and you see an infected tree with Dutch elm disease, this is basically what you would be seeing. So it is very crazy to think that just these little microscopic fungi are destroying years and years of life. So what are the symptoms? Leaves on one or more branches in the outer crown of the tree turn yellow, wilt, and then turn brown. Fallen leaves are strewn over the lawn in spring or summer. Although they can happen at any moment during the growth season, symptoms frequently start to show up in the late spring and early summer. And if the bark is removed, brown streaking can be seen along the sapwood of wilted branches. The following year, after the tree becomes infected, the leaves fail to develop, they fail to grow, and they just stay there, all yellow and brown and wilting, or are undersized and soon wither. And finally, infections can cause brown discoloration in the outer sapwood. Typically, the disease is more widespread in the tree than external symptoms might indicate. So now you'll be seeing a couple pictures of what the symptoms really show. So in this first one, you can see the streaking that is seen once the bark is removed. Here you have a couple of leaves that are dying or are failing to develop. In this first picture, you can see that these leaves kind of just stopped growing. And in the second one, you can see how a part of it is yellow and brown and the other one's green. It's because one of the branches has already become majorly infected. And then this other picture is also like a microscopic look of what the bark, of what it's seen after the bark is taken off. And that's just basically the fungi spreading the disease and destroying these trees. So my final question, something I really want to talk about and interested me the most, was how this disease affects the xylem. So the disease is spread by carriage of spores, like previously mentioned, on the bodies of elm bark beetles, and spores enter the xylem when the beetles feed twig crotches, and the vessels become blocked by gums and tyloses of fungal material, and foliage wilts, ultimately resulting in tree death. And one of the key symptoms of the disease is the wilting of leaves, which is brought on by the obstruction of the xylem by the tyloses and gums, which are assumed to be byproducts of plant cell wall breakdown. Brown staining just beneath the bark is another diagnostic sign brought on by the death of the xylem parenchyma cells. And so various bark beetles act as vectors of the pathogen. So basically, from the infection point of view, the key event is establishment of the fungus within water-filled xylem vessels, to which it has gained access by feeding activities of the beetles. The early stages of colonization may be quite slow. However, once in large, long springwood vessels, spores of the fungus can be disseminated very rapidly under the influence of transpiration. So the end result, unfortunately, there's no cure to this. So trees infected ultimately die between 1 to 3 years, which is very sad. So like I just mentioned, this disease has no cure, but there are some control measures that the government of Ontario has established to contain this disease. So they monitor trees for symptoms of infection throughout the summer, just to make sure that everything's under control and the fungus isn't spreading as fast. They also prune and remove all dead branches and trees from site, which is good, because if, like I previously mentioned, one of the reasons why some trees become infected is because roots interconnect. So if there's a branch that's on site that has been infected and there's a healthy tree, there is a chance that this healthy tree may become infected. And they also they have this insecticide can be used in the spring and fall to control the bark beetles, and highly valued elm trees can be injected with registered fungicide. So yeah, thank you for listening. This was my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you. Bye. Oh, I forgot to show this picture. This picture kind of shows a before and after, so you can see how this tree is infected and how my right side of the tree is like completely healthy, and the left side is just completely infected and kind of dead. And that's just kind of like a before and after of what a tree looks like when it's infected by this contagious and horrible disease. Okay, thank you. Bye.